Hello and welcome to the Designing to Empower Disabled Communities Fireside Chat at the 2024 AIGA Design Conference. I'm Huang, Senior Director of Learning and Programs here at AIGA, and I'm joined by Caroline Casey, founder and creator of the Valuable 500, and Craig Matchett, a creative director who oversees Saffron's design team in London. We're going to learn more about Caroline and Craig through the course of the conversation, as well as learn more about their collaboration and their respective organizations. So let's just jump straight into the conversation. My first question is for Caroline. The Valuable 500 has made remarkable strides in engaging CEOs of corporations in disability inclusion. So can you share a bit more about what the Valuable 500 does and a bit about your vision for the future of how you're shaping global disability rights and representation with companies?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me, Lee Sean, the best voice for podcasts and radios I have ever heard. And I'm somebody who's registered blind, so I really appreciate cadence in voices. So it's lovely to be here and also with Craig, who I'm a massive fan of. The vision for the future, honestly, is that something like the Valuable 500 doesn't exist and that we are not having these conversations and that we have normalized inclusion and accessibility into the wireframes of our businesses in the same way that we have done health and safety. That we can't operate our companies, our economic sector without having inclusion and accessibility as just a given. I think that's what I would really want. And the way forward for me to see that happen is that we believe the Valuable 500 business is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. And to end the exclusion crisis that exists for 20% of the global population who have a disability, and if you add a mother and a father to that, that's 54% of our global economy. We need business. And we need business to act in an inclusive way, intentionally, and as they move through their evolution as an organization. Because one thing I would say is around this journey of inclusion is not done in some simple heroic act or some project or some moment. It's like small, consistent acts done hundreds and thousands of times, but in the hands with the accountability of leadership. It needs to be driven right from the top because the choices that leaders make affect the cultures of their companies. And the Valuable 500, its job, and when we were creating it, was to end the CEO silence on disability inclusion. And can you believe, but 5 years ago when we began, we had no CEO ever stand on a leadership stage and speak about disability, ever. And I was frustrated because unless we have leaders stand, be intentional and accountable, nothing's going to change. And so to form the Valuable 500, which is 500 of the world's most influential brands, we had the CEO commit to having a board level analysis and commitment of where disability performance was, make a personal commitment to improve it. And we put it on a website and we held them to account. And that's how we began. And we're the world's biggest partnership, business partnership. And what we're going to do now, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is where the real troublemaking begins. Because the power of 500, what could you do with that to break a system, remake a system? So that's our job.
Wonderful. Let's turn it over to Craig for some context on the design side of things. And so I have a two-part intro question for you, Craig. First is, how has your work at Saffron inspired you to focus in this area of inclusive design and to bring Caroline's expertise in particular to the Valuable 500's target audience? And then the second part is kind of the setting the intentions for this conversation. What impact you hope our conversation today will have on the design industry more broadly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with Saffron and at its origin was set up, I think 27 years ago now with Jacob Van Boomen and Wally Ollins, and they set up a company that was across borders, across cultures, that was, set up to create like cultural brands, place branding. And I think what they really valued at that time, and they still value today, and that DNA runs through the entire company, is diverse voices, diverse perspectives, diverse people can help you understand and build brands that are relevant for places, for people that you might not understand, might have never met, might have never visited. So there's a beautiful piece of DNA throughout the company's origin. I think where our potential is as any brand agency, as any design agency, is that we stand between, people and businesses, and we're the ones that are almost positioned so well to like educate people, guide companies, and really help them start to be more aware. I'm not an expert, like I'm not the inclusion and I'm not the inclusion expert at all. And I think it's the right thing to say. And I think as designers, we're afraid to not be the experts, but we can make a difference. These small little things we do can really, really make a difference. I met Caroline, I keep saying it wrong, it's like three years ago, when we started this process of the V500, and it stands in a landmark of my career, and I think Saffron's career as well, of a moment before and after. Before, we would kind of box ticket and we were doing accessibility and we were making sure colors were like getting those nice A's on the way we design things. And then after that, we're so much more aware. We're bringing people into the conversation as we create. We're making sure that we're really building things for people and specifically for the disabled community as well. Yeah, I think in terms of where we the global landscape and where we want to take this conversation is ultimately that I think this, Caroline pointed out, these small little things, like the little things we do as designers, as creatives, as people on this industry, have a massive effect. And we should really start to try to take advantage of the standpoint that we have, where we're engaging with these large global entities, small entities. Like we really have that potential to make the difference on, through the design industry for people with disability.
Thank you both for setting the scene and the broad context. I want to follow up with some concrete examples. Going back to Caroline, you've already mentioned that authentic collaboration with the disabled community is a cornerstone of your mission at the Valuable 500. Could you share with us some real-world examples of how these collaborations work, how they transform a design process and the outcomes of that, and any general advice you might have for how to foster real genuine partnerships and not just box checking, as Craig was mentioning?
Well, I think the most important thing that Craig has said is that he's not an expert. And if you could see him, he was putting his hands on his heart and going, nearly apologizing that he's not an expert. But neither am I, despite the fact that I am a person with lived experience, and there is lived experience in my family with disability, and pretty much most people I know I have experience around. But I couldn't even tell you. Actually, I run away from anybody that says they're an expert in the field of diversity, equity and inclusion, because they're not, because it's an ever evolving journey. And that is why I am obsessed about when we are designing for groups and communities of people, you need them at the table. And you need not to be frightened to say, I don't know. And to be radically curious and say, okay, look, we want to get this right, but we haven't a clue. Teach us, help us. And the biggest mistake that I think any organization makes is what they may have great intention, but the people to whom they want to speak to creatively or as consumers or through their brand, and if you're not having them at some point right at the beginning of the process, it's too late as a second thought, right? And so there's a great expression in the disability community, nothing about us without us. Mm-hmm. And then I love the expression that's been evolved by Yasmin LaRoche, who's an amazing Canadian advocate and disabled activist. And she just simply says, like, nothing without us. Like, why are we making this? We naturally need to think about when we're designing, who are we really designing for? And one of the things that I loved about Saffron, because when we went out to look for a partnership, we were really looking for a partnership. And we were looking for a partnership for an organization who wasn't willing to say, oh, we know how to do it all. We were looking for an organization that was saying, we are passionate about doing it brilliantly, so help us. And that to me is the best, like, design-led thinking, is that they came to us to say, well, we don't have it all, but we want to do it with you. And the whole thing about Saffron, Craig, I can't remember what your tagline is, but it's something a little different. Is it something a little saffron? I always remember that.
A pinch of saffron.
Yeah, right. And I think that was the secret ingredient for me, why we chose them. They knew that there was something something to get, but they might not necessarily had all that experience, and they were willing to bring in a group of people who knew more than them, and most importantly, went out and talked to the community before even starting the process with us. And I just loved that. That's accountability right there. And I just thought that was something exciting. And I think we have to be accountable for the fact we don't know what we don't know.
Yes, I'm hearing some themes just to pull them out and highlight them a little bit. So there's humility as a theme, like recognizing what you don't know, as you were saying. But I'm also hearing that you really saw the passion in Craig and his team at Saffron. And then also this general principled approach of inclusion, actually bringing in people, disabled people into the process, right? And not making it an afterthought or a box checking kind of thing. And so turning this back to Craig, you said, you are not an expert. You've been learning, you've been bringing in the people who are actually involved in this. But from a design business perspective, how do we move beyond checking these accessibility boxes at the end of the process? Are there metrics that we can use to really see if we're making impactful, inclusive design decisions in the lives of people with disabilities? Are there ways to track progress in the right direction, even if we're not the real experts of this and, we're not just checking the boxes?
I think absolutely. I think there's two ways to look at this. One is the metrics that we can measure, the usability reports of digital products and websites are still hugely important, right? There's still, I think the top 100 websites in the world are still scoring quite low on user access. And we sort of feel like access is something we've handled now, like where digital technology is the way the web is right now. We feel like we've got that. It's great. It looks great. But actually, there's still a lot more to do there. It's gradually increasing and things are getting better. And as we, get a better understanding of like best practices, and software is helping us out a lot now by just, making things work first time rather than, costing more time and more effort. We are getting there, but we should not forget that those base metrics, that is the box ticking, unfortunately, right? We have to keep ticking those boxes, is very, very important. But I think it's the new way we should try to shift things forward. And I think the way us as a company, as Saffron, and myself hold myself accountable for is almost like, how many times have I implemented moments within my process that allow us to check for things along the way? And that's the very basic things you do. Is just like, sometimes accessibility happens at the end once you've designed everything. You've created things and you've picked a brand code and you're like, my gosh. There are some websites, I forget who it was. I really wish I could name and shame them, but big organization in the UK. Can I name them? I don't know. Superdrug. I don't know if it's still true. It was like 2 years ago. None of their colors are accessible on their website whatsoever. And that's like a bare basic minimum. So we need to get there. But they obviously didn't have those processes along the way in which they're creating work. When they're validating, when they're even building their brand back then, they didn't have those processes. So how many, processes or moments during your processes do you think about accessibility, think about inclusion? Often as a brand designer and as a designer as a whole, we love a persona, right? We love to imagine an audience, and like we spend so much time back and forth with our client, like, who's your perfect audience? Let's pick 4 audience members. Let's run them through the journey. Let's make this bespoke to their needs. And why do we never have someone who sort of represents different abilities as one of these personas? It almost was mind-boggling when I realized this at the time. And it's like, we sort of tried to do that as a, often we'll charge like personas cost this much. It's this much time to define them. It's this much time to do journeys. We tend to try to do a free persona of someone who offers a sort of a different viewpoint on ability. So, people you include in your personas, I think is an important metric. And then ultimately it's about learning from people with different experiences and different lived experiences. Like, how many conversations have you had? How many people have you brought in to learn from them? Get their perspectives and everything else. For the bigger companies and the bigger organizations, I've been really, gifted to work with like huge companies like Meta and tech companies at the similar level. And right now, one of the organizations we're working with has an inclusion consultant on every call. And it's gorgeous, right? It's like so amazing that there's all these different like voices, and someone comments on the digital, someone comments on the communication, someone comments on the art direction, someone comments on the accessibility and the inclusion. And it's fantastic. The things they catch and the things they bring to the surface, we would never have had that if we didn't have that perspective. So those bigger companies who it really should matter to them need to start counting how many people on their team are there to consult and to be an advisor and to be, to bring things from their perspective. How many times do they visit the meetings? How much influence do they have on the work? Are really, I think, super, super important metrics as well.
And where they are in the business, right? So that I love you saying it's gorgeous that somebody's on the team, because it is. It's a very simple thing, but what agency does that person have in the business? It's really important. But I think I love hearing you talk about, if you're going to talk about the metrics, how do we, technical discrimination is a reality. It exists. So how can we eliminate that together and not make somebody be the baddie, right? So, because if we have defensiveness and constantly finger pointing, I think this is what makes us sort of kind of be so frightened that we're going to get it wrong that it's just easier to ignore. And I think listening to Craig talking about bringing people in, not be defensive, asking the question at every step of the journey. Technical discrimination can be removed by ensuring that people can ask questions and not be scolded. And that should, come on, we're in the creative industry. The idea of being radically curious to what we don't know. The unknown and the difference is so exciting, right? So that's where the innovation, that's where a brand stands out. And well, where could we get a more different experiences from the extremes, right? So I just think there's something so exciting about looking at this and turning it on its head. And often architects in the past have seen that designing for accessibility and inclusion remove the beautiful, gorgeous process of design, when actually I just think it's something that is so untapped and unseen, to know that it can bring in something wildly different, and wildly different can be extraordinary. It can be the differentiator for a brand.
Yeah, it seems like you're alluding to this false binary choice between something beautifully designed versus something accessible, somehow having to check the boxes because of regulations on accessibility is somehow making the design less good, and watering it down or whatever that is. And I feel like you're really challenging this as just not true, but also a false binary there.
Yeah, I don't know about Craig, but I think the idea of just doing what you have to do is kind of dirty to the creative process. I don't know about you. I'm a troublemaker by nature, so that we might be hit over the head with a stick. And I just want to also allude to what Craig is talking about. He's absolutely correct. We did a piece of research in the Valuable 500. 30% of the FTSE 100 companies, 30% of them have completely inaccessible websites today.
Wow.
We'll just talk about the opportunity. Do you know how much money that you're clicking away, you're giving away to other people because they can't engage with you as a consumer? And if you're just speaking about the UK, it's Craig, isn't it 249 billion or something? That's just because you're putting a barrier for a consumer to engage delightfully with your brand. Why would you do that?
I was trying to think of a metaphor for this, right? I was trying to think of a large multinational global company deciding they don't want to do business in a country of 1.3 billion people because they don't have anyone who speaks the language. And it's that's crazy. Why would you cut yourself out of that market? Right.
It's a massive market, the size of, was it India or China? Or it's probably, that's now too small. But why would you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's another really important point to highlight, right? That you're making the business case here of this is a lost opportunity. It's not just some regulation that's being foisted upon brands and designers to, to check the boxes. Again, going to this idea that there's a real business case here. Carolyn, are there other challenges that we should know about before I wanted to go into your actual collaboration and what you learned from that? But in terms of other challenges, in terms of why is it that 30% of these companies don't have this? Why are they leaving money on the table? Is it cultural barriers? What is going on with these companies that you see?
I wish I could give you a stand-alone answer, but I can give you a few. one of the reasons that we have the relationship, for example, with Saffron is because we met Jacob as well. And you've got to remember the choice that a leader would make. So he was willing to invest in his organization to be able to meet our needs as a client. So if you think about that, that's a leader saying, this is important. The reason the Valuable 500 was created because we needed to elevate this issue to the board, to the CEO. This is not something you delegate away to somebody hidden and tucked away in DE&I or something well down somewhere in an organization. This needs to be elevated, needs to be accountable, and you need to be measured against it. So the first is that our leadership traditionally didn't really engage with this issue. Mm-hmm. And that's because mainly there was never the understanding, the return on investment of engaging with this amazing community of which I'm part of, as I say, which is 54% of our global economy, 13 trillion. That's the throwaway amount that they say we have in disposable income. But forget that for a second. Let's think about the aging population. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about disability, it's between the ages up to 64. And then we put an aging population in, right? So let's put that into it. And as we grow older, what does that mean?
Temporary disability as well. It benefits pregnant women because at certain moments they will need some of these benefits and features and accessibility that might be offered when you.
Or somebody who's fallen off, I don't know, a ski slope or whatever.
Broken leg.
Yeah, right. Blah blah blah. So there's this lovely term, Lishan, that's called we're all temporarily abled, right? So to that point, that the business world never saw the economy behind and the value, hence the Valuable 500, behind this community. And I don't just mean in dollars, but I actually mean in innovation. And I'm so bored saying this, and people probably are like, oh, she's saying it again. But remote controls were designed for blind people to watch television. SMS texting was designed for deaf people to use a mobile phone. The beautiful touch screen that we all know so well, that is used and designed for disability.
Caroline, one of my favorite things right now is subtitles on films.
COVID.
It's the most like Gen Z thing ever now, right? Subtitles is like how people concentrate, and like it's a primary part of the way we consume media now.
Yeah. And like, so if you think of that, Lishan, you're asking why, is because it has always been seen as niche. There's no big ROI. Then there was no leadership. And honestly, it's only in the last, I believe, 5 to 10 years that we've got these incredible, young, very visible and vocal, disabled activists, artists, writers, leaders. The whole world has changed around that. And I think that is where we're seeing the transformational change. So that would be the reasons that we would have said have been the problems in the past.
I wanted to learn more about your actual collaboration now between Saffron and the Valuable 500. I think you mentioned, Craig, earlier, like when you first met Caroline, but what were some of the highlights as well as the challenges of actually working together to create the brand for Valuable 500?
I think it's the only client relationship I can have where we can measure, if we're talking about statistics, how many times we might have cried, right? Like the emotion and the energy and the passion and the love and the empathy that we put into this project was huge, right? It was challenging and rewarding, and the more challenge, the more reward you get, and you can really hit some incredible heights. Like it was a fantastic process, and we, at the very beginning of this project, we kind of failed the first attempt at building. We had the wrong mentality. We had the wrong approach. We maybe had some budget that we needed to do more. But our first attempt of what we built for the V500 was terrible. It was awful. It was working with the existing assets. It was like, what could the most accessible brand in the world be? And it lacked the energy, empathy, passion, like it was very just, on the let's score really high rather than let's mean something for people with disability and let's represent them. It was a painful moment, right, Caroline? That first, interesting, but...
Yeah, because I have to say, you knew the intention of the team, but oh my God, I was like, I hate this. So remember I said like compliance is a dirty word?
Terrible.
So here where they were so earnest to get it right. And I remember going, I want the saffron. I want that bit of spice. I want you to be wild in it because I'm wild in it. And because I want you to bring everything. I want you not to be scared. I want you to just go big and go large, and I think when we talked about, one of our icons, I wear her on my back a lot, is Frida Kahlo, right? Mm-hmm. So it was just like, come on, guys. That beautiful Leonard Cohen quote from Anthem, forget your perfect offering. It's the light where the cracks get in. And I am so delighted we failed together so disastrously at the beginning, because then what was to come? I mean, come on, it was amazing.
Yeah. I think amazing. One of the key ways we captured, I mean, I'll tell you the truth. The brand is predominantly capturing Caroline's attitude, the boisterousness, the power, the like, F you, I won't take no for an answer, but also the elegance and the sophistication and the beauty of how she uses language, and the beauty of the V500 as an idea to get these 500 CEOs, hold them accountable, hold their wallets at ransom. But we had this image of a boot, like a beautiful, elegant shoe, but it was like a chunky heel with like the red lacquered base. And it was like, this is it. This is the valuable 500. It's like, it'll stomp on you, but God, it's going to be like elegant and beautiful and make that difference.
You caught the duality. I think if there's one thing that I felt, and this is how I believe just really beautiful relationships, which produce beautiful work, is when we're really hearing the other person. And I feel that Saffron got this off the bat. They understood that we're a duality brand, so that we come with our head and our heart. We come with stories and stats. And they came up with this beautiful manifesto for us, which was based on elegant dissent. I mean, like when they revealed that to me, I'm like, oh my God, yes, that's exactly what we are, because we have to be revolutionary in what we're trying to do, because the improbability of getting 500 of the world's biggest CEOs to sign something, put it on a website and agree to be their own revolutionaries is extraordinary. But we did it kind of elegantly or manipulatively. So I just love that. And that was built on relationship. You can have the best designers in the world who technically can do great stuff, but there's no heart in it. And I would say for anybody, you just go on and you see the valuable 500 brand on its own. No doubt it is what helped us deliver those CEOs.
I think what was also really beautiful was how we, built a brand that represented disabled people in a way that they want to be represented, right? Of the photography and the whole process around that was, for me,
you had inclusive shoots. Everybody you worked with.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I learned so much in that moment, and it's something that I sort of carry into like everything I do now. But that like inclusive photography, inclusive shoots, really capturing people's power and energy and capturing them for them true selves was an incredible part of the brand. This kind of, like I mentioned earlier, like it was a bit of a learning moment. I have a before Caroline and the V500 and after, and for all the work we've been doing with Meta for the last 5 years, when we rebranded them to Facebook Company and recent rebrand to Meta, we did a photo shoot to define their brand art direction before Caroline, before the V500, and like remember the inclusion part of it, and like for some companies of this size, it's very important that they are reflective of a huge audience. I think we were like at about one page on like it was like more like representation or like diversity rather than inclusion. And post V500, we had about 6 pages, which wasn't just about like, we need to photograph people with disabilities, so we show we care. It was more like, how do we get them in on the process? How do we get them in behind the camera? How do we make spaces accessible? And really sort of, capturing the things you have to do in order to be inclusive. And it was, I looked recently at the work then and the work now when we're going into like planning art direction and shooting, and it's a big learning I think I've taken from this.
And I think, Lishan, it's also important to say that when we started our work, like companies like Zebedee were only becoming, right? So these are agencies. So now we're starting to see more. It's like Zebedee talent is phenomenal. So you're starting to see people like Sinead Burke who've been out there. when she has Tilting the Lens. So we have a lot more. Keely Cat-Wells with Sea Talent and what she's doing now with Sophie Morgan on Making Space. We now have voices. When we begun this, we were like crickets. Like there were very few. And I think it's becoming much easier now. So there's no reasons that companies can't. I mean, I don't know what you think, Craig, but I definitely see, you know, when I just look at what you guys did, it was so new. And then I'm on the Diversity Council for L'Oreal. And we had a call with L'Oreal today. And I was referring to the work that we had done with Saffron and recommending Zebedee Talent for something that they're doing. And see, this is how it works, right? Good work sells itself, right? This is how it works. I think it was hard when we began, right, Craig? Because we just didn't have any reference points at the time.
Yeah.
You are making the reference points yourselves here, right? And I want to kind of transition to talking about like, how do we expand this out? How do we scale it out? How do we shift the paradigm? We've been exploring the theme of margins here at this conference. And so for Caroline, I'm curious, you know, we've been talking about the need to shift from these marginal requirements, this kind of box checking mindset, and we need to shift to one where we're placing disabled people at the center of things. You gave us some concrete examples of things that were designed for disabled people that we now all benefit from. So there's a kind of universality to that. So yeah, what can we do to really expand this shift in perspective so that we can unleash this innovation and impact in design? You know, I think you're already doing some of this work, but are there some other examples that you could share or approaches for other people to take with them?
Yeah, look, for example, Margot Joffrey, who originally worked for Verizon. So when she took a main stage on an ad week 2 years ago, like it's these positions, these stages, because actually I know, listen, the stage and the platform aren't everything, but it's telling these stories, right, are really important. Can Lyon having MasterCard holding a space around the inclusive and inclusive design stage. Like all of this stuff, every single step we do collectively brings up to like that sky. Because I always talk about this work we're trying to do is like a sky full of stars. Every tiny piece we do, how does it light it up? You know, when I think back, when actually this is a really weird circular moment, Sean, but it is like Katie Talahoska, who's now the Valuable 500 CEO. She was hugely important in working with Michelle Oliver in Mars to make the Maltesers ad, which was the first ad which represented disability, I think, in a really brilliant way and, you know, had a huge impact on the bottom line. But then the gap between that, right? And I think it was like 5 or 6 or 7 years until we had another amazing ad. You see, I think the way that we can do this is we who sell space, or the people who sell space, or the people who in your supply chain, you need to be asking people, what are they bringing to the space? How thoughtful they are about inclusion. You have the choice as a big organization who you choose to do work with. Make sure they have the same credentials as Saffron. Sorry, but do that. We need to start demanding those spaces, because what we're trying to do is represent the actual humanity of 8-point-something billion people, not just a small part of it. And therefore I go back to who holds the budget? Who holds the budget? Who's got the power? And so the only way that I see this happening and changing is that the more and more and more we hear conversations like this, we hear leaders who are in charge of budget, leaders who have impact and influence, they need to be speaking to this and giving permission to their organizations like Jacob did with Saffron, and also similarly like, I don't know, Tim Cook does with Apple, or Satya Nadella does, or Carmine DeCibio did with EY. They need to take the responsibility.
I'm curious for Craig's perspective on this now. We've already talked about like the macro sense of like the trillions of dollars that companies around the world are leaving on the table by not including disabled people. But as it relates to the design business or the consultancy business, are there things that you could say to convince other agencies? Obviously, it's a great niche that you have right now in your positioning, but we need to like expand this market, right? Because there's so much work to be done beyond just Saffron. So what would you say to other folks running agencies, running design studios on like how to make this a reality, how to do more of this kind of work?
I don't think it has to be a niche, right? Like I think that's it should be a given. Like every every designer, every creative are there trying to solve things for people, trying to come up with ideas that connect with people. And I think we all should be aiming towards, trying to make this happen. I think there are huge reputational benefits to talking about these things, being out in the world about these things. I think there's we always go in these bubbles. Do you remember the metaverse? Do you remember now AI? We go in these bubbles of oh, there's a new thing. Everyone needs to talk about it. It sometimes staggers kind of disbelief that we're still not talking about this interesting challenge or this design conundrum that we seem to have put ourselves upon by trying to be more inclusive in the way we design. I absolutely love Microsoft as a creative agency, as someone who really cares and thinks about how people interact with things on a daily basis. Their inclusionary design department, I don't know if everyone should go and just look at their website, look at the work they're doing, look at how they're really changing people's lives and the kind of amazing reputational benefits that has if they're thinking about what is needed now, thinking about what is needed in the future for people. As we said, some of those technologies that were invented for people with disabilities eventually become the de facto standards today, and they become the norms today. So yeah, it shouldn't be a niche. It should be part of just what we're doing, which is connecting with people, doing building things for the world, for people.
And one of the reasons Microsoft is so successful, Craig, is because somebody like Jenny Leigh-Fleury, who is their chief accessibility officer, who reports into the very top of the organization, whose job she's mandated to ensure accessibility and inclusion is right across every function. There is the key, right? So, for example, when Salesforce joined the Valuable 500, they created a position like the Jenny Leigh-Fleury position and got a chief accessibility officer, right? So these things, that is a great example. The reason Microsoft is excelling in this is because the leadership put the money and the budget and the intentionality and accountability behind it. And that's how it can change. Craig, at the very beginning, you were saying it's gorgeous the way somebody who is responsible for inclusion comes on the call. Well, I'm sorry, but that person costs money. That person needs to be educated, right? And let's be also honest, when we're talking about inclusion for people with disability, we don't arrive only as one aspect of ourselves. I think one of the things that I love as Aaron Phillip, if anybody wants to look up Aaron Phillip's name, they are on, at the fashion show. We have a New York fashion show at the moment. They're a wheelchair user. Go and look at that person. That's not one person with one single part. I'm a woman. I'm 53 years old. I happen to be blind. There's the intersectionality of it. So this is the point. It's not just about disability. It's all the multiple facets that we turn up. That's when it gets exciting,
Yeah, it's accessibility. As Craig was saying, we have different hype cycles of different technologies and innovations. It's not a trend, right? It's just core to the human condition. And also disabled people are full people that are not solely defined by what their disability is. And I feel that's part of this paradigm shift that we've been talking about.
Exactly.
So I want to wrap up asking you both about the future, where you see this going, where you want to see this going, as well as a call to action for our conference attendees here. So this is open to both of you, Caroline and Craig. Where do you see the future of inclusive design going? Caroline, you've already said eventually you want to make yourselves obsolete so you can shut things down because you've won. But are there other parts of this future that you want to paint for us? And the same for Craig.
Yeah, true. I'm going to give two. I'm going to go down to the nuts and bolts of education, right? So, I've had a great education. I started as an archaeologist, pure comedy when I think about what I'm doing now. Anyhow, and then I did change management and I was in business school. So where is inclusive design on our curriculum?
It's not there.
It's not there.
No.
So where's the pipeline? Why are we not even discussing this, right? So can we get this into the curriculum, whether it's chief marketing officers or marketeers or designers? Where is that? Are we not, why is this not on the curriculum? And do you know what I want to do? I want to challenge, okay, this is wild, but I feel like I want to challenge 5 of the world's biggest business schools to get this onto the curriculum when it comes to design, right? So, and not just for marketeers, but I'm talking right across the design process. So that's my number one. I think that's hugely important. I do believe the future of this will be that we will be determined successful on metrics. And I believe without data and without measurement, we're going to go nowhere. So I actually want to see our companies reporting in their annual reports on their performance against this. Because without this, if you don't measure, it's not going to get done. So that's a very hardwire thing. And then if you want a really simple thing to begin with, companies, go to your E or G groups who have disability. That's the best intelligence. If you don't have one, set one up, because there's the brains and the intelligence. So E or G groups, let's performance and measure. And lastly, get this on the curriculum. Come on.
Jumping back to what we were saying before, these like booms and these trends of particular sort of technologies, I'm both very excited for kind of what Microsoft's doing, kind of what Meta's doing, these new ways of interfacing with technology, the Apple VR OS and everything. Like they seem like they're very exciting for people who are differently able to be able to interact and do things, right? Like, it's an interesting space, but it's also kind of scary because, as we were saying, if all of a sudden we see like large language models as the way to fix text description on images rather than putting in the work in the graft, or, you know, improving how people can like gain access to like design software. I know design software is kind of a nightmare for people with disability to use. Adobe is a terrifying monolith of a company who kind of has a lot of control and kind of has, you know, not really giving other people the chance to come in and perhaps challenge a little bit of that accessibility. So this technology space and the potential of that being both very exciting, but also maybe trying to paper over the cracks of what we kind of need to start getting right now. And as we said, like those basics, those making the web more accessible stuff should come first before this sort of new technology will come in and kind of offer lots of great solutions. I'm 100% sure they will. But ultimately, I think what we should be trying to do and think about is like us as designers, as creatives, we're getting so much more, I say, free time. Every time every time a process gets more efficient, we try to find another way to spend our time. But ultimately, time is the thing that technology should win for us as designers, as creative agencies, to then spend it on the things that will matter for people. And hopefully then, you know, time becomes something that really enables us to have more thought around what it is we're designing, who we're designing for, how can we include them.
Wonderful. So to take us out, could you share maybe a call to action for our audience today? What's something concrete that folks can do, whether it's to learn more, since you've mentioned education, Caroline, or to do something small to really move things in the right direction in their own spheres of influence?
You can see that I'm a verbose Irish person, so I talk a lot. So I'll try to do this really quickly. Number one, I just want you to ask questions. I just want you to be radically curious. I just really want you just to ask that question is going, am I leaving somebody out? So how can you know if you're leaving something out? I do think you need to have those focus groups that have the lived experience in them. I'm going to give you a name drop. A great organization that we've worked with is Open Inclusion, led by Christine Hempel. Seriously, a lot of research agencies say they have the disability and experience. They do not. So make sure that you know that. And I think thirdly, and probably this is not what anybody expects me to say, to bring your heart to good work, you have to touch your own heart about what it means to belong and to be included. So for me, amazing work that lasts forever is drawn from the inspiration of the heart. And courage, this work needs courage, and courage is drawn from heart. So yeah, don't leave your heart behind.
Thank you.
Beautiful. I think we are, I realize now I am one of the best placed people as a creative leader, as a designer, to make a difference, right? Like I see the things I've done, and I see all the differences my little actions have made to the way my team think, to the way my team are educated, to the way we then go and engage with companies. So us creative people on this conference, we are best placed through that. It's time and thought, right? It's just putting your time and your thought into the things that matter. And then, you know, thinking about it during the process, thinking about it at the beginning, and then being consistent with it. So it's not just like one big action, ta-da, we did a big, great inclusionary thing. Small little things consistently, and repeat those actions and just make those small little changes, and it will bring things forward. I think the practice, right? The practices that we have during our processes have to improve, and we have to not just wait to the end for things to happen. This is much harder, right? More representation. Our studios should be places where people with disabilities can come and live, and people with different lived experiences can offer their experiences. We've got to get better at how we can connect with those people and get those people into the industry as a whole. But the small things like read a book, right? We love books. Read a book, speak to the person next to you about it. Like, share your knowledge, share your understanding, connect with people, be empathetic. Those little things we do will really, really matter.
Craig Matchett, Caroline Casey, folks watching this, thank you for joining us for the Designing to Empower Disabled Communities Fireside Chat at the 2024 AIGA Design Conference. I'm Lishan Huang. See you at another event.